Welcome to Tennessee's at-home learning series for literacy. Today's lesson is for all of our fifth graders out there, though everyone is welcome to tune in. This lesson is the fifth and the last lesson in this week's series. My name is Ms. Thompson, and I'm a fifth grade teacher in Tennessee schools. I'm so excited to be your teacher for this lesson. Welcome to my virtual classroom. If you didn't see any of our previous lessons, you can find them at www.tn.gov/education. You can still tune into today's lesson if you haven't seen our others, but it might be more fun if you go back and watch our lesson, since today we'll be talking about things we learned previously. Today, we'll take our last deep dive into Casey at the Bat to see what else we can learn. But before we get started, as always, to actively participate fully in our lesson, you'll need a couple of things. First, you'll need 2 pieces of paper, a pencil, and a surface to write on. Then you'll need a marker or a highlighter. And you also want to get the student packet for ELA, grade 5, lesson 15. I have it here, grade 5, lesson 15. And you can find that on the website, www.tn.gov/education. Remember, it's the student pack for ELA. I'll give you a few minutes to get prepared for our time together. Now, in our third lesson of this series, I had you quickly draw a few examples of faces of fans that fans might make while they watch a big game. Do you remember that? Remember, I drew these? Remember, faces of fans as they watch a game. Those were mine. You drew them too. Those are pretty funny, huh? Well, today, I'm not going to ask you to draw faces. Instead, I'm going to have you grab your paper and listen while I read a few sentences to you. You're going to be drawing something, but not so detailed as your faces. You'll have 3 symbols options to draw on your paper as I read. 3 symbol options to draw as I read. Now, these are the symbol options. You will have a check mark, which will represent something good or positive, an X, which represents something bad or negative, and a question mark if you're somewhere in between positive or negative. So your 3 symbol options are a check mark, an X, or a question mark. Are you ready? I'm going to read you a sentence, and you're going to jot down a check mark, an X, or a question mark. Are you ready? I'm going to read you a sentence, and you just quickly, if you put a check mark, an X mark, or a question mark after the sentence I read. The sun is shining today, and I get to ride my bike. The sun is shining today, and I get to ride my bike. That's your first sentence. The sun is shining today. Check mark if it's good or positive, X if it's bad or negative, and a question mark if there's something in between positive or negative. Your second sentence. My yummy slice of pizza just hit the floor. Is that a check mark for positive, X for negative, or question mark for somewhere in between? My little brother broke my game. Positive, negative, or in between? My backpack is green. Positive, negative, or in between? My friend got a new pet snake. Positive, negative, or somewhere in between? I'm finished with my homework. Positive, negative, or somewhere in between? All right, I can't wait to see what symbols you came up with. I'm going to go through it and we'll see if you came up with the same ones. I'm going to share mine and then we'll compare them. The sun is shining and I get to ride my bike. I give this one a check mark because I do love the sun and I get to ride my bike, so that's positive. My yummy slice of pizza just hit the floor. Well, that is definitely a negative because I love pizza, and if it hit the floor, that means I can't eat it anymore. My little brother broke my game. Positive, negative, or in between? Definitely negative. That gets an X. My backpack is green. Let's think about that one. I like green, but yellow is really my favorite color. So I'm going to give this one a question mark because it's neither positive or negative. It's kind of in between. My friend got a new pet snake. Now, that might be a positive for her, but I don't like snakes, so I'm going to put it as a negative. I finished my homework. That's exciting, and you can probably get to play in your video games if you finish your homework, so definitely that gets a check mark. Now, I looked at these sentences and I asked myself, positive, negative, or somewhere in between. That was really fun. This activity really gets us thinking about how our emotions can change very, very quickly, and that they change based on what's happening around us. This is also true as a writer and a reader. A writer has the power to change the way a character feels just by the words he or she writes. And likewise, the reader is at the mercy of the words in front of them. What they read, they are likely to feel. Just like when I read those sentences to you a moment ago, the words meant something to you. They made you feel positive, negative, or somewhere in between. Isn't it neat to think how words can make us feel? I think so too. So today we're heading back in once again into our poem, Casey at the Bat, by Ernest Lawrence Taylor. In this lesson, I want us to continue thinking about the emotions of the characters, but watch out, I might have thrown a little twist. So we need to get started. Now, I'm going to make this a little mysterious for you today. As we read, I want you asking yourself something. Is there something about the way an author uses the structure of the poem to emphasize the emotions of the characters? Now, I want you to remember that word, structure. It just means the way a text is organized on the page. So I'm just going to write that down. Structure, how the text is organized. Structure, how the text is organized. You already know that the text of a poem is organized or structured in what way? What are those called? They're lines. They make up. The lines are made up of them. What are they called? That's right, stanzas. But my question to you goes a little bit deeper than that. I want to know if there's something really special about the way the author uses this structure to emphasize emotions of the characters. Now I've really got you thinking. So let's go ahead and start. And as always, what am I going to do? That's right. Number my stanzas. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Remember, structure, how a text is organized, and how the structure can change from stanza to stanza based on what the author writes. The outlook wasn't brilliant for the Mudville 9 that day. The score stood 4-6 with just an inning left to play. And so when Cooney died at first and Burroughs did the same, a sickly silence fell upon the patrons of the game. We have read this stanza a million times. We know that just like the rest of the poem, the stanza has how many lines? That's right, 4. We know that this stanza introduces the team, the Mudville 9. We know that the score is 4-6 and Mudville's losing, and it's the last inning. We know all that. And we know that both Cooney and Burroughs strike out. That we know that in the last inning, and when both Cooney and Burroughs strike out, the crowd is going to be really bummed out. The bottom line is there really anything left to know about the stanza, or is there? I want you to look at it in a different way today. In stanza 1, we have basically been introduced to our two characters, the fans and the baseball team. And in previous lessons, we've really done a good job of learning all about the team. We know who they are and what they want. But the author knows them best. He gets to decide how he wants his characters to interact with one another and just when that should happen throughout the story. But remember, this is a poem, which means it's extra hard challenge to make it work. There are stanzas and lines that rhyme, and well, a certain structure to follow. So now I'm curious to know if the author of Casey at the Bat deliberately used these challenging structures to emphasize the emotions in his characters. What do you think? Maybe. Before we move on, let's remember who we're focusing on as we continue to read. Remember, we're focusing on the fans and the team. You got it? Let's keep going. A straggling few on stanza 2 got up to go, leaving the rest, with that hope that springs eternal within the human breast. For they thought if only Casey could get one whack at that, they'd put up even money with Casey at the bat. Okay, we're at another stanza. Again, 4 lines. But I want to know which character we're focusing on in this stanza. Fans or the team? Who are we focusing on, the fans or the team? That's right, the fans. We're focusing on the fans in stanza 2. So, we're trying to find out if the author uses this structure in a deliberate way to emphasize the emotions of his characters. What emotions do you think the fans are feeling here? I agree. The word is right there for us. Hope. They're feeling hopeful, thinking that a win is just within reach if they could get Casey to the bat. We're getting sense of hope right here. All right, and this is pretty interesting. We see that in this stanza, the author wanted his readers to feel what the fans were feeling, hope. Do you feel that as a reader? I do. But let's backtrack a bit to the first stanza. Let's reread it and see if there's a certain emotion we can squeeze out of it. The outlook wasn't brilliant for the Mudville Nine that day. The score stood 4-6 with just an inning left to play. And so when Cooney died at first and Burroughs did the same, a sickly silence fell upon the patrons of the game. Let's think about our characters first. Although the two players in the team, Cooney and Burroughs, are introduced here, what emotions does the author want us to feel? That's right, the fans' emotions. So how are they feeling in this first stanza? That's right. I think they're feeling bummed out and a little like the opposite of how they're feeling in the second stanza. Here, they're hopeless, but here there's a feeling of hope. I'm going to teach you another word that you can use for hopeless, and you might have heard it before: despair. The word is despair. Despair means a feeling of hopelessness, and I think it's a perfect word to use the way the fans were feeling at this moment. So, are you thinking what I'm thinking? Just maybe the author deliberately uses the structure of this poem to emphasize the emotions of the characters, particularly the emotions of the fans. Although we're going to have to keep reading to make sure, I'm thinking we're really onto something here. But Flynn preceded Casey, and so likewise did Blake. But the former was a pudding and the latter was a fake. So on that stricken multitude a death-like silence sat, for there seemed to be little chance of Casey's getting to the bat. Another clue here. How are the fans feeling? Yes, they're feeling hopeless. Remember, a great sense of despair. They don't believe there's any chance that Casey's going to get a hit. I think we're getting closer to his discovery, so let's keep reading more. Stanza 4. But Flynn let drive his single to the wonderment of them all, and the much despised Blake tore the cover off the ball. And when the dust had lifted, they saw what had occurred. There was Blake safe on second, and Flynn a hugging third. Yes, what did we just find out in this stanza? What are the fans feeling now? That's right, they're feeling hopeful. And the word wonderment tells me that they're feeling hopeful. So they go from feeling hopelessness and despair to feeling hopeful. All right, I think it's time for us to take a step back and see what we've really discovered. Just whose emotions has the author primarily focused on? That's right, the fans. And we see that he goes between two main emotions. What are they? That's right, he goes in between hopeful and despair, or hopeful and hopefulness, right? The fans are excited, they're feeling good, but then they're not, and he goes back and forth between those. Have you noticed a pattern? I kind of have too. It's like each stanza either emphasizes the fans' feelings of hope or despair. So I believe it's time for us to get ourselves organized to move on through the rest of our investigation. Let's think. Now we know that we're really looking at the emotions of the fans and how the author has us toggle between them, between the feelings of hope or despair. How can we get started charting it out? I see that there's 52 lines here, and they're grouped into stanzas. I'm going to count how many stanzas there are, but I already know that because I've already numbered them, and there are 13 stanzas in Casey at the back. So I'm going to get a fresh piece of paper, and I'm going to number it 1 through 13. Please do so with me. Stanzas. You're going to number your paper 1 through 13. Now, what we're going to do for our stanzas here is we are going to start charting each stanza from the perspective of the fans, either hope or despair. We want to really see how the author uses the structure of the stanzas to show how the fans' emotions go back and forth and back and forth. So let's go quickly jot down the fans' emotions in stanzas 1 through 4. Are you ready? In stanza 1, what were they feeling? In stanza 1, yes, they were feeling despair because the two players up to bat already struck out and they're losing. So in here, I'm going to put the word, I'll zoom in for you, despair. That's how the fans are feeling, despair. Now, what about in stanza 2? A straggling few got up, the hope that springs eternal, they put up even money. Man, I think they're feeling hope because they say the word hope there. Stanza 2, they're feeling hope because hopefully Casey might get up to bat. What about stanza 3? Stanza 3, they're talking about how Blake and Flynn were not very good baseball players, and it's likely that Casey won't get up to bat. So I think it's a bit of despair. So we're going back to despair. What about stanza 4? Stanza 4. Flynn hit a ball. Blake is on the base. They're very excited. They're very shocked. So I would think hope again in stanza 4. Now, good charting. Let's keep reading. Look at this. Despair, hope, despair, hope. Isn't that interesting how the author continues to go back and forth? I'm moving on to stanza 5. Just charting our thoughts. Then from the gladdened multitude went up a joyous yell. It bounded from the mountaintop and rattled in the dell. It struck upon the hillside and rebounded on the flat, for Casey, mighty Casey, was advancing to the bat. What do you think here, hope or despair? I think 2. I think you're right. Hope. Let's write it down. What words tell us that they're hopeful? Gladdened, joyous. Very good. Moving on. There was an ease in Casey's manner as he stepped onto his place. There was a pride in Casey's bearing and a smile on Casey's face. And when responding to the cheers, he lightly doffed his hat. No stranger in the crowd could doubt 'twas Casey at the bat. Now, in this stanza, we see that Casey is really affecting the mood of the crowd. He's smiling and he's tipping his hat to them. How do you think they feel now? Yes, they probably feel very hopeful that he's on the field. So let's chart it. Write hope on your paper. For stanza 6, hope for stanza 6. Now, I think there's something really interesting happening here. Look at your last 3 stanzas, stanzas 4, 5, and 6. What have we charted for these stanzas? Yes, hope. They all have a sense of hope. We charted hope for all of them, and I think we're toggling between hope and despair. What do you think is happening? I agree. We're starting to see that the fans are feeling more hopeful as we move along in our poem. Casey's now on the field. So how do you think the fans are going to be feeling in the stanzas to come? Let's find out. 10,000 eyes were on him as he rubbed his hands with dirt. 5,000 tongues applauded when he wiped them on his shirt. Then, while the writhing pitcher ground his ball into his hip, defiance glanced in Casey's eyes and a sneer curled Casey's lip. Wow, they are loving Casey right now. They're clapping and cheering as he gets into his pitching stance. I'm definitely thinking that they're hopeful here. So let's chart it on our chart. 7, hope. Lots of hope. The fans are feeling really, 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 really good right now. Stanza 8. And now the leather-covered sphere came hurtling through the air, and Casey stood a-watching in a haughty grandeur there. Close by the sturdy batsman and the ball unheeded speed. That ain't my style, said Casey. Strike 1, the umpire said. Okay, now we know this is the place in our story where Casey makes a decision that changes everything. Changes everything. He lets the first pitch go without even trying to hit it. He lets the first pitch go without even trying to hit it. So, if I'm a fan, let's think about it. My hope may have just dwindled or went down a little bit. I thought Casey for sure was going to win this game. And look what he's done. It's not hope for sure, but it's not despair. That's not the right word either. I'm thinking the fans are really surprised that Casey would be so risky to do this at this point in our story. Maybe the right word is shocked. What do you think? Would the fans be feeling shocked at Casey right now? I think so too. I'm going to write shocked for stanza 8 because I think they're really shocked at what he just did. Wow, we've gone from hope and hope and hope to now shock. And if we look at our chart, guys, we see that the author has made sure one main emotion is emphasized in each stanza. One main emotion. It's like as a reader, we can expect that each stanza will bring a certain emotion, but now we know how to look for it. That was pretty good of the author. But before we move on, do you think we'll stay with the word shocked as we read? Let's find out. I'm turning my page. From the benches, black with people, there went up a muffled roar, like the beating of the storm waves on a stern and distant shore. Kill him, kill the umpire, shouted someone in the stand. And it's likely they would have killed him had Casey not raised his hand. Do we think the word shock works here? Or is there another word to describe their emotions? Kill him, kill the umpire. Do you think they're shocked? I don't think though. I don't think they're shocked. I think there's a better word. They're beyond shocked. Casey has let 2 pitches go by flying by him. If I were a fan, I'd be thinking, what is he doing? So if shocked no longer works, what is a stronger word we can use to add on our chart about how the emotions that we're feeling? How would you describe the fans in the stanza? Angry? I think anger would work really, really well. So besides stanza 9, I'm going to write anger. Quick question. Once you get angry, does it take you a while to settle back down? I wonder how long the fans will stay angry. Moving on to stanza 10. We know we've gone from hope to shock to now anger. Stanza 10. With a smile of Christian charity, great Casey's visage shone. He stilled the rising tumult. He bade the game go on. He signaled to the pitcher, and once more the sphere flew. But Casey still ignored it, and the umpire said, strike 2. Okay, I'm with you. What do we think now about the fans? He's let another ball go past without even attempting to hit it. I think we need to chart it. Remember, we're charting the emotions the fans are feeling based on the words and phrases that the author uses here. So I'm going to go over here because there's 13 stanzas. I'm in stanza 10, and I'm going to write anger. We know the fans are still angry. I'm in stanza 11. Please follow along. Fraud, cried the maddened thousands, and the echo answered, fraud. But the scornful look from Casey and the audience was awed. They saw his face grow stern and cold. They saw his muscles strain, and they knew that Casey wouldn't let that ball go by again. The first part of the stanza, we see the fans are still angry. Fraud, they're yelling. And although we haven't been focusing on Casey, the yelling of the crowd changes the way he feels. He now realizes that he's got to get serious. He's got to get really serious. They want to win. The crowd wants to win. But we notice that the fans' emotions change a bit too. Think about how they might feel at this very moment. What do you think? They see that Casey is ready to hit his last ball. His body, his face, everything says he's determined to make a hit. What emotion do you think the fans are feeling? He's ready to make a hit. I think they're unsure. They're very unsure of what he will do next. I'm going to write unsure next to stanza 11. Wow, we've got so many emotions going on. I'm in stanza 12. The sneer is gone from Casey's lip. His teeth are clenched with hate. He pounds with cruel violence his bat upon the plate. And now the pitcher holds the ball, and now he lets it go. And now the air is shattered by the force of Casey's blow. Wow. Very, very interesting. I think we might be back to a word we used earlier. Look up at your chart and think what word might fit best. Go up here. What word in our chart do you think might go with stanza 12? I see that they use the word hope, and maybe they might be hopeful that he's going to help the game. Now, they see that ball coming and they think he's going to swing. They think he's going to get it because he's determined. And then 13, things change again. On to the last stanza, although we already know how this ends. Let's get into thinking about emotion. Oh, somewhere in this favored land, the sun is shining bright, the band is playing somewhere, and somewhere hearts are light. And somewhere men are laughing and somewhere children shout, but there is no joy in Mudville, mighty Casey has struck out. Okay, this stance is a bit tricky. It starts out emphasizing one emotion and it ends with a really unfortunate ending. Remember our last lesson, we talked about how it started out happy and then really, really sad? So far, the author has made the emotion in each stanza very, very clear. But here, the first 3 lines are, they're very happy. Remember? These 3 lines also focus on somewhere other than the baseball game happening in Mudville. What emotion do we get out of the only line in the last stanza that focuses on the fans? Because remember, our goal here is focus on the fans. Yeah, they're back to being bummed out, just like they were at the beginning of the poem. Can you use the word we used earlier that works on this stanza? What word would you use? I would think despair would work too. Let's add it to our chart. Despair. Wow, that was a terrific last read of Casey at the Bat. We've gotten so many emotions that the fans feel. They go from feeling despair, hope, shock, and anger, all these things. Let's do a quick overview. We enter the game and all feels lost at the beginning. Mudville's losing and the star player is back in hitting order. They may lose before he even makes it to the plate. Amazingly, Casey makes it up to bat and he's very confident that he has this win all figured out. He does, however, make a risky choice and let 2 pitches go by, only to make the crowd very, very mad. Then, after he gets serious, swings at the last pitch and strikes out again. Ugh. Remember, in our last lesson, we learned about something called perspective. And today, we have focused on the perspective of who? The fans, that's right. What's interesting is that the author was pretty clever in the way he used the structure or the organization of this poem to show the fans' perspective throughout the poem, how their emotions changed, stanza by stanza. Let's take a look back as a whole. We started with despair. We then moved to hope. Then we went back to despair, and again to hope. Then we see hope again, again, and again. But let's stop right there. Why do you think the author emphasizes hope in all these stanzas? Yes, I think he's building up for the rising action. That's when the action gets really, really good and you can see or feel that something is about to happen. So let's see if we find that something represented in our chart. I'm going to keep going. Oh, hope, hope, hope. And then all of a sudden, here it is, shock. That's our something that we see, the rising action. Let's see if it continues. We move from shock to anger and an even stronger emotion, and then we stay with anger again. We would consider stanzas 8, 9, and 10 the climax, or when the rising action reaches its peak. 8, 9, and 10 would be the climax. Reaches the peak. Now, that is where the action really happens. But we know all that goes up, what must come right back down. And anger gave way to an unsure as Casey got serious for pitch number 3. And hope emerged just one more time as Casey took the swing, but to no avail because despair was back in town. Casey struck out and Mudville lost the game. So today, we have reread this poem multiple times, but today we did it from the perspective of the fans. And we really tried to investigate or dig deep into how the fans' emotions changed from stanza to stanza, and we even charted as we went. We started out with a low, and only one place to go was what? Up. Right? We went up and up and up, and then boom, everything changed in our poem. Slowly, we came back down again to the same place we started, despair. This something coming back down is called the falling action. It makes sense that it's the opposite of the rising action. Then, the last part is called the resolution, or the end. In Casey at the Bat, it happens really cool in the last stanza. Really good job putting it all together today. I know you love this poem, and I know you did a great job at tracking the emotions. I think you're ready to move on to your independent work. Now, today we explored how the author used the structure of the poem to emphasize how the Mudville fans' emotions changed throughout the course of the poem. We saw that they changed quite a lot in just a small amount of time. But what about Casey and the other players on the team? Their emotions must have changed too. So, this is your independent work. Imagine you are one of the players on the Mudville baseball team and you watched as mighty Casey struck out. Mudville lost. Now, look beyond the big loss. After the game was over and the fans had left the stands, You and your teammates, including Casey, have packed up your gear and you're heading out of the ballpark. Emotions are running high and you all decide to stop and talk it out before you go home. You can see that Casey feels bad about his choice to risk the game, but some of your teammates are still angry. You know that you have one chance to make it right before your next ball game. You are a teammate on the Mudville baseball team. Write about what happens next. What does the conversation sound like? Who talks? Who stays quiet? Who leaves? Who stays? Who's stubborn? Who forgives? Most importantly, what do you say that might help it make it easier to move forward? How are you going to help solve this problem? Remember, you will want to include words and phrases that help your reader feel the emotion of this conversation you're having. You will need to add dialogue, that's people talking, to help your reader know who is talking. You will also want to use descriptive words to help your reader see. Remember how we picture it in our mind, the conversation as it unfolds. Don't forget to do a good job of sharing your way as you think this problem can be solved. I know you're going to help your team move beyond this situation. You're a great problem solver. As always, I have thoroughly enjoyed experiencing Casey at the bat with you, and I hope that you've enjoyed the poem as well. Thank you for inviting me into your home, and I look forward to seeing you again in Tennessee's At Home Learning Series next time. Bye.